I wanted actually, so we can potentially cut this bit off if it's a bit too weird and too out there.
Yeah, I could crack on. Yeah.
But okay, so here it goes.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued.
I'm something like, because I've never had this conversation with a woman, but
Okay. Oh, interesting.
how much of an effect does the menstrual cycle have during like intense periods of training? And like, to me, like one thing that we don't really talk about is that in women's sports, especially in MMA, like what happens, say a woman's cycle is ending at the time that they're doing a weight cut, like how is that, have you ever had situations?
Yeah, literally, this I think is such an important subject. It doesn't get, people feel uncomfortable about it, even though half the population probably has to deal with this at some point in their life. I think it's crazy that it's not talked about, but it's like, especially for me, it's a huge, like, it has a really huge effect on me competing and me training. Like, even going back to when we're talking about emotions, that is the biggest factor of my emotion. Like, I might not even have had a bad day, but my menstrual cycle, I personally, I have an app called Clue where I track my periods.
That's cool.
But I will literally have like a breakdown, and then obviously come onto a period like a couple days later. I'm like, oh, that's why. Like, I can track my emotions through this app, and I've done it for years now. So I'm like, it definitely correlates. But it's so many things. Like, my own personal experience, when it comes to that time, I'm more vulnerable. I'm really sensitive to so many things. Like, I don't always like getting hit, or sometimes I get a bit more angry at that time. Like, I come from a gym with like loads of banter, and I don't even take banter well. I get real weird. People make a joke that I normally I'm like, yeah, and then I'm like, oh, I can't believe you say that to me. So I think, like, within the gym, it's a huge thing. And I think one thing that I found really helpful is to be honest with my training partners and being like, by the way, I might be a bit crazy today, but it's not against you. Or if I say to someone, I'm just not going to spar, even though like the other week I was like, mate, I'm going to spar, it's going to be amazing, let's do this. I think I had a really good experience of people being really accepting, and before I was telling people this, people were just like, she's like, I even had someone, and I don't blame it, for being like, does she want attention? Like, why is she going really hysterical about something that at the time wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal to me because I was having this emotional time. And so I think it's up to the woman, but I would say, even if it's not with everyone, like, you don't have to tell everyone about your menstrual cycle, but especially with someone who, like, your training partner or your coach, just be honest and be like, because some women don't deal with this at all, and some women have a real terrible time with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people are going to understand that, like, if you have a coach that says, I don't care, or just deal with it, I say that you're probably not with a great coach. Like, part of being a coach is being empathetic and knowing when to be tough, and knowing when to be like, we can step back. And so I think a big part of that is being honest and being like, maybe now is not a right time to have a hard sparring session, or even, like, for me, it affects like my cognitive functioning. Like, sometimes I will go over a session, I'll be like, I can't remember anything. Like, I won't be able to do a move that I could do 100 times before, because my brain is so scrambled from this. So yeah, I think the big thing is being honest. But I think that's within the training session. When you're coming towards like fighting, like, that is when this is this huge issue. Like, I've turned down fights before because I know it's going to come around that time.
I find it amazing that women are still, I mean, I don't know how many times it's happened to women like in MMA, but I'd imagine it's quite a few times that you're towards that time, and it's the time to fight as well. It must be it must be super difficult.
As I've said, I've turned down fights, but I also, you can't, the way I've had quite a few, like, I haven't done much fighting recently, but obviously I've had quite a few fights, and there have been times when it's kind of happened. I mean, even actually my last fight, I was really getting nervous about it, because I was meant to basically come on a couple of days before my fight, and that's when I was weight cutting. So I was like, I'm gonna have a terrible weight cut and be emotional, but for the fight it will be okay, because I had a period of emotion and stuff, and I kind of tracked it and then let everyone know, and it never happened. And I was weight cutting, and I was like, oh, why is this not happening yet? And then being like, and then I kind of like, I had bits that I remember sparring for that fight and having a bit of a breakdown and being like, oh, I don't know if it's this, or trying to, as well as like the anxiety that you always get with a fight, I was also having to deal with this, and being like, I'm definitely not using, like, I didn't win that fight, but I'm not using it as an excuse, but it's a factor that I think men just don't ever had to think of. And then come fight day, I'm like, it's happened, man. And me, I remember I was sitting, we were just doing the medical forms, I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable, went to the toilet, and I was like, had to come back to my coach in my corner being like, it's gum. And then like an hour after that, I was in quite a lot of pain, so I had to go get painkillers like the day of the fight, because obviously I've got like cramps and stuff. I'm like, oh, it's the worst. And then obviously my coach is really in tune to he's been a coach for about nearly 6 years. He's really in tune to my emotions, and during the warm-up for the fight, I was literally, my emotions were like this and like this. Like, I'd be doing a little bit of sparring backstage, and like, hey, I'm ready, I'm gonna do this, gun in, like, I'm gonna show everything I've got. And the next moment, I, like 5 minutes after that moment in my head, I had somebody else, they weren't in my fight team, but someone else, I think another coach, being like, oh, are you right? Like I'd already fought, and I'd lost, and I was like, oh no, I haven't fought yet. Or one of my corner team was like, I haven't fought yet, and I was obviously, I looked so down, even though I was, so I think having to deal with that and then go into a fight and be really, really switched on for that fight, I think is draining, is difficult. So it's just kind of, I kind of had to get on with it, like it's part of being a woman. So, but it is just a big piece of advice I'd give for other women training, whether or not you're doing fights or whether you're just training for fun, like, be honest about it. People aren't gonna, or they shouldn't anyway. If they are, then what are you doing? Like, yeah,
maybe you need to find a different gym, because it's not.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Not fair.
Like, be honest about your struggles. Like you'd come into a gym, and if you had an anger problem, I think you'd probably tell people about it and be like, by the way, if I kick off, like, same for this. It is a hormonal thing. It's not. I have a degree of control of it, where I can step out of a situation if I'm feeling like super hormonal, but I can't, like, when I, like, in that fight, I wasn't completely switched on the whole fight, and I think this was a factor of it. And I don't know if it's something that I could have just like turned on my fight mode and turn off hormonal mode. So I think it is a really big factor, but it's a factor that will affect some greatly. And like, I've actually talked to this with other fighters online, female fighters, and they've done, a friend of mine's actually done a survey, which is really cool. I think she's doing it for a dissertation about the effects basically on women athletes and periods. But it will affect some women greatly, and it won't affect other women at all. So